Hello everyone, it's Ashley at the Silver Bay Public Library, and I am back once again with a read aloud for you guys. We will be reading Treasure Island, originally by Robert Louis Stevenson, and this version was retold by Chris Tate and illustrated by Lucy Cravino. There's not a lot of illustrations, but as I've mentioned, I'll show you what I can. This is the second to last day of reading and our summer reading program, which ends on Friday, so make sure you come in and tell us how much you've read so you can get fun prizes and buy some books. But yeah, I don't think there's much else I have to say. We're going to be going through cruising through quite a few chapters so we can get this book done by Friday. But we last left off on chapter 16, The Attack. So let us dive right in. As soon as Silver disappeared, the captain turned on us and gave us all his fury for having left our posts. All of us were ashamed except for Gray, who had stayed fast. We then loaded our guns and got ready for what was to come. I don't have to tell you what's coming, said the captain. We're outnumbered, but we can fight if we hold to our discipline. Each refreshed himself with a cup of cool water from our spring and got ready. We doused the fire, but the smoke still lingered in the air. We each took our positions, and then Joyce, the servant, asked if he was to shoot if he saw a man. Of course, shouted the captain. He then sat fuming and waiting. Without wasting time, Joyce shot into the woods, and his shot was returned by 3 smoking rounds of fire. Did you hit him? Asked the captain. No, sir, answered Joyce. I believe not, sir. From that moment, we knew the attack was on. Suddenly, a cloud of pirates began to run out of the woods straight for our fence. They swarmed over it like monkeys, and we all fired. 3 men fell, but 1 nimbly jumped up and disappeared. 4 others had made the fence, and 7 or 8 continued to fire toward us with little effect, their shots falling short. Soon, however, the 4 pirates fell on us fiercely, and our whole position was reversed. We had gone from having secure cover to being openly exposed. There were shots everywhere. And groans and curses, and the captain called for us to draw our swords and fight hand to hand in the smoke. I grabbed my sword and cut my knuckles, and saw a pirate grab Hunter's gun and smash him with it. I saw the doctor slash a mutineer across the face, and I heard the captain yelling in an injured voice. I turned to find Anderson, the pirate, scrambling above me, his sword high above his head. I had no time to be afraid, for I lost my footing and fell, head over heels, right down the hill. When I landed, I saw that one of the pirates was coming over the fence with his dagger in his mouth, and then suddenly the fight was over. Gray had cut down 1, and another had been shot just as he entered the house. A third the doctor had cut down. The 4th was now turning tail and climbing over the fence. The doctor cried for all of us to fire, but we were finished for now. Suddenly, as they fled, they were all gone, and I saw the cost we had paid. Hunter was laid out, stunned, Joyce was dead, shot through the head, and the squire was holding the pale captain. The captain is wounded, said Mr. Trelawney. How many did we take down? Asked the captain. 5, answered the doctor. The captain was grimly satisfied with this. Well, now our chances look better, with our odds at 4 to 9. We were 7 to 19 before. And that's the end of chapter 16. Very short chapter. But now we're on to part 4, which I think might be the last part. I'm not sure. But chapter 17 is how my sea adventure began. Interesting. The mutineers did not come back that day. They had their fill of fighting. As for us, Hunter never did recover and died that night of his injuries. Captain Smollett was wounded badly but not permanently, the shot having gone through his shoulder and nicked his lung. He would survive, but was under the doctor's orders not to move. Just after noon, the coast being clear, the doctor strapped on his pistols and headed silently out to his meeting with Ben. Gray thought him insane to do so under such conditions. In the meantime, I sat thinking it's unfair that I should just sit and wait. I soon snuck out, filled my pockets with biscuits, and decided on my own mission. I would go to find for certain if Ben's boat existed and was in good shape. I armed myself with pistols and powder and slipped out. It was foolish to do so, but I was only a boy. As it turned out, it helped save us all. I headed quickly along the shore to the White Rock and soon saw the ship rocking in the waves at the same place. The Jolly Roger still flying. I also saw Silver and the pirate, last seen coming over the fence, pulling back to shore from the boat, and I heard the squawking laughter of his parrot in the wind. Soon they were coming my way, and I hurried on toward the White Rock. Below it was the boat, well hidden. It was the simplest, lightest, most basic craft possible. It looked as if it were made by men hundreds of years ago, but it was light and it would float. I soon had another notion that I could not get rid of. I thought I would take the boat under cover of night to the Hispaniola. Then I would cut the ship loose and let it go ashore in the night in some other cove. I thought this would stop our pirates from taking to the seas to kill again, and I thought, as careless and sloppy as they were, should be easy to do. I waited until the dark and fog had set in and ate my biscuit. Then I carried my little boat to the water. In the dark I saw there were only two lights. One was the fire of the defeated pirates spread out on the shore. The other was the Hispaniola. I waded out, set my boat on the water, and made for the ship. My new boat and I soon made it onto the surf and quickly found our way up close to the Hispaniola. It took some time to get used to, but it was a fairly solid boat and light in the water. Soon enough I had laid hold of the rope that anchored the ship, called the hawser. It was tight and taut, and I knew that with one cut the entire Hispaniola would go humming along in the tide. I knew also that the taut hawser could snap and would kill me with its force if I let go, so I began to cut it slowly, fiber by fiber. Suddenly, as I finished cutting the final threads, it slipped under the water. I had been hearing loud voices from the cabin, and now realized that there was a fight on board, and the angry voices were getting louder. I knew it was Israel Hands and another, the pirate with the blade in his teeth, who had tried to scale the fence. I heard them call each other terrible names, and then it got quiet for a moment. I could also hear the voices of the mutineers on shore, and could hear songs being croaked out in raspy voices. At last a breeze came up and the ship moved sideways and began to draw away, and I was suddenly caught up in the wake of the big boat. I thought I might be smashed, but somehow I was not. I now decided to pull myself up for a look into the cabin, and saw the two men wrestling madly. They had each other by the throat. I ducked down quickly and shut my eyes tight. I heard more singing coming from the shore. 15 men on a dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. Drink and the devil had done for the rest, yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum. Suddenly, I felt that the boat had increased in speed, and opened my eyes to see that we had sped across the shore. The campfire was right behind me. And here's just a quick photo of the ship as it is sailing away, and the angry men fighting inside. The pirates. We had been set on a new course, and were heading out to sea. I could see the ship was moving on a sideways course, and the sailors inside knew they were in real danger, and had stopped fighting. They could tell disaster was afoot. I stayed flat against the bottom of my little boat, eyes closed and shivering with fear. I expected an ocean death at any moment, imagining myself swept under by the immense waves. Soon I grew numb and tired and slept, dreaming of my home and Admiral Benbow, far away from my terrors on the sea. And that is chapter 17. Chapter 18, My Cruise in a Coracle. My little boat, or a coracle, as it apparently is called, was tossing toward the south end of Treasure Island when I awoke. I was racked by thirst and found myself in and out of giant waves that tossed me to and fro without stopping. I could not paddle, and I saw that I would be drowned or dashed to death on sharp rocks if I came closer to shore. And I saw what looked like giant slugs on the rocks. These, I later learned, were sea lions, barking in the sun. I saw that I would never make shore, and that I was heading north toward the Cape of the Woods. I thought I might be able to land there. I was still rolling in the waves when I found a smooth swell. I noticed that if I just let the boat go on its own, I made progress. It moved on top of the waves like a leaf, and I thought I might be able to reach land. But it was not to be. As I rolled up and down in the terrible sun, my brain burning and my throat dry, I drifted past the point of landing. What was I to do? As I rounded the next cape, I saw an incredible sight. The Hispaniola under full sail was moving my way. At first I thought it was going the other way. Then I thought the sailors had come out of their heavy sleep and were chasing me. When it made yet another strange move, I was confused, not knowing what to think. Suddenly I understood, as the great ship swayed back and forth, that no one was steering it. The men were either hiding themselves below deck or had abandoned ship, and then the idea occurred to me to try to take the ship and give it back to its captain. Could it be that I could get aboard and steer it back? If the frightened pirates were on board, could I tie them up and take the wheel? I was made brave by the idea and tried to make my way toward the ship. Tossing in the wind, it continued to sail toward me. As I drew alongside, I saw that I had one chance. I could see the ship's shiny brass fixtures now and thought it might be easy, but the wind died and the ship stayed put. Then, just as suddenly, it began to spin toward me with the cabin window still open. It came around, and I saw that it would spin by, and the bowsprit, a wooden beam that jutted out in front of the ship, would be over my head. I jumped like a rocket from the boat. Into the air, catching the beam. Just as suddenly, the boat rose up and came down on my little craft, crushing it. I knew then that I had no way back home but upon the Hispaniola. In Chapter 19, I strike the Jolly Roger and let Israel hands lend a hand. Interesting. But, swinging about on the bowsprit, I knew I would be tossed into the sea. With heart racing, I made my way crawlingly back onto the deck. My eyes took in a sight of disaster and despair. Mud was caked everywhere, and a broken bottle rolled about to and fro. I saw that the sails were all up, but that the 2 watchmen lay in a heap on the deck. I saw Israel and the other sailor roll with the wind, and though Israel moved, the other was stock still on his back, his face painted over with a horrible smile. He was dead in a pool of blood. Suddenly, Israel began to moan and roll around. I saw that he was wounded and sick and bleeding. I walked slowly toward his body and stood over it. "Come aboard, Mr. Hands," I said ironically. With this, he rolled over and called for something to drink. He was parched with thirst. I knew then that he would rouse himself. I had no time to lose. I ran below decks to find everything a disaster. There was mud and broken glass everywhere. Books were torn open and stores were scattered randomly. In the dim light, I searched for food and a keg of water. I found biscuits, pickled fruit, raisins, and some cheese. I brought these on deck and, after eating and drinking my fill, gave Hans some of the cheese and biscuit, as well as some of the water to drink. "Are you hurt much?" I asked him. He nodded and groaned and said, "Well, he's dead. Now where did you come from?" "I've come to take back the ship, and you'll call me captain until further notice." He looked at me sourly, but said nothing. I told him I would drop the Jolly Roger. I scampered up and cut the flag loose happily. "That's an end to Long John Silver," I said. "Well now," said Hans, "this man and me were going to sail the ship back, but now he's dead and we need 2 to sail it. So I propose you give me a kerchief to tie my bleeding leg with, and I'll help you sail it back." "I'm not stupid," I said. "I'm not going to sail back to Kidd's Cove where Silver is." "Well, I don't have much of a choice, do I? It's your ship now and I'm wounded, so I'll sail wherever you want, by thunder." And with that we made a deal. I tied his wound and he ate a little, and we both began to sail the ship back to shore. Soon we were on our way, but as he gained strength, I saw his wounded look turn to a sneer. He began to watch me closely and craftily as he eyed me at my work. Now, under Israel's guidance, we made our way over the foamy deeps in the Hispaniola. We soon stopped again for another meal and began to talk. "Well now, Captain," he said, "I wonder if you could go down below decks and get me my glass. These old eyes could use a little help setting our course." He turned his gaze away from me and back out to sea. It was plain he was up to something and wanted me off deck, but I thought I could outsmart him. "Of course," I said. "It won't take but a moment." With that, I ran below decks and, taking off my shoes, came up just behind him by way of another passage. There I could see him without being seen. I watched him come to life and drag himself with some effort toward the dead man. Once there, he pulled out a knife and, wiping the blood off, tucked it into his sleeve and scrambled back to his spot. It was clear he meant to have my life. As I ran below to find his spyglass, I realized that he needed me to steer us back to shore. Once there, I'd be in trouble, but for the moment I was safe. I clambered back up on deck and handed him his sleek brass instrument. "Now, you take my orders, Captain Hawkins, and we'll make shore in no time. Captain Hawkins, and we'll make shore in no time at all." He showed me where he might come in, and I ran about setting sails and making sure that we hit our mark. "Steady, steady, steady," said Hans, and at the last moment I turned us hard and we made for our shore. I was so caught up in the work that it wasn't until the last moment that I sensed him behind me. I wheeled about and cried out as I saw him lunge for me. I let go of the sail and I quickly snapped at him and stopped him dead. Before he could recover, I ran away, but he was determined to get me. I quickly reached for my guns and pulled the trigger, only to find the seawater had made them useless. I cursed my stupidity and ran again. He moved swiftly for a wounded man, and soon boxed me in on deck. I dodged one way and he feigned the other. We played at this for a bit, each wary of the other. Then, suddenly, the ship struck the beach and the jolt threw us both into the air. When it stopped, the ship was tilted and there was no place to stand on deck. Hans was tied up with the dead man while I scrambled up to the top of the mast. There, I quickly primed my guns and made them ready. And here's a picture of Hawkins at the top deck. He looked up at me and sneered. Evilly. He sneered evilly. He put his knife in his teeth and began a slow, painful climb up the mast after me. Soon enough he was too close for my liking. "One more step, Mr. Hands," I said, "and I'll blow your brains out." I even laughed a little, thinking myself the victor. He stopped. I could see his mind working slowly. He took the dagger from his mouth to speak. "Well," he said, "we're caught. I would have had you if not for that landing. But I don't have no luck, not I." I was smiling away when I noticed that his hand had slowly drawn back. He had reached his knife and let loose right at me, pinning my shoulder to the mast. I cried out in pain and, firing both pistols in shock, dropped them into the ocean. But they didn't fall alone. Israel's Hands fell to a watery death along with them. Chapter 20. Pieces of 8. Hands sunk into the water, and I watched as a bubble of blood came up to the surface. I soon began to feel sick. I could not pry myself loose of the dagger and was terrified of falling from my spot to die alongside Israel. I then shuddered and by doing so tore the blade loose and was free. It turned out I was only pinned by the tiniest piece of my shoulder, and mostly by my shirt. I crawled down the mast and then, looking around, decided to throw the other dead man into the sea. This I did in a hurry. I tried to set the ship as right as I could so that I would not be hurt, and then decided to take my leave. I leapt off the deck of the Hispaniola and, in a happy frame of mind, headed for the forest. I thought about the hero's welcome I would expect and about the way I would be treated upon my return. I had been a fool, but my prize was the return of our ship, and I thought myself brave and lucky. I walked on, and then, as dusk fell, I walked closer and closer to where I had first met poor Ben, our island man. As the night got darker, I grew even less sure of myself and kept tripping and rolling in sand pits. Soon enough, I found myself walking in moonlight. This helped, but I still walked warily. I did not want to end my adventure by having my own party shoot me. Finally, as I came to the stockade, I saw the giant smoldering remains of a fire. I wondered why there had been such a big fire. It went against the captain's orders, to be sure. I saw the blockhouse in shadow and not a soul stirring. I thought perhaps something had gone wrong while I had been away, so I began to creep on my hands and knees. As I got closer, there was little doubt they had kept a bed watch. I got to the door and stood up. I could see nothing with my eye. Then, as I walked in, I smiled to think I might lie down in my place and surprise them in the morning. Doing so, I heard a shrill cry that chilled my heart. "Pieces of 8! Pieces of 8!" the voice repeated. It was Silver's parrot, Captain Flint. He was the watch and had found me out. I turned and heard Silver's familiar voice. "Who goes?" I turned only to run into one body, then into another. "Bring us some light, Dick," said Silver when I was captured. A man left and soon returned with a flaming torch. Okay, part 5. Okay, chapter 21. In the enemy's camp. Oh no. In the red glow of the torch, I knew all was lost. I saw only 6 pirates, but they had taken the house. I assumed my friends were dead. The parrot sat on John's shoulder, and Silver turned to me. I could see that one of the men was wounded, and the other 4 were barely awake. Only Silver seemed sharp, if pale. "Well now," he said, "shiver me timbers, what a pleasant surprise. It's Jim Hawkins. Now aren't you a smart lad?" I stood and watched him, saying nothing. "Well, I always wanted you to join, and now you will. You'll be one of us. Your friends don't want you anymore, it seems." I knew then that they were alive. My heart gained hope, but I said nothing. "Well, now, you can join us, or you can feel free to answer no. Now that's right and fair, wouldn't you say?" I felt the threat of death hanging over me, but decided that now was my last chance to speak. "If I'm to choose, I need to know what's what." "What's what?" said Silver. Is that your friends have abandoned you. They woke to see the ship gone and came to see us and make terms. We took the stores and house, and they took their leave. They're off to who knows where. But they said they'd have enough of you and that you had deserted them." "Well," I said, "here's what's what with me. You're in a bad way, and it was me who put you there. I heard you from the apple barrel and spoiled your mutiny. I put hands at the bottom of the sea. I cut the ship's cable and hid the ship where you'll never find it. Kill me if you wish, or keep me alive, and if you do, I'll be a witness against you when you're in court for piracy. It's your choice." At this, one of the men stood with a knife in hand, but Silver turned on him. "Oh, are you captain now? Think again, or I'll teach you better. Next man crosses me, he'll feed the fishes." A few of the men rose up and argued with Silver, but Silver put on his terrible face and wielded his cane. "Do any of you want to challenge me?" he roared. "No, I thought not. Well, hold your tongues, then. This boy is a braver man than the heap of you." Now one of the men came forward, claiming the crew's right to step outside and have a council without their captain. This they did, leaving Silver and me alone. He looked at me, and his eyes told me that he feared the worst. "They'll turn on me, Jim. It's up to you and me to save each other." I reacted with shock and squinted. I know you've got a ship somewhere, I don't know how, but I know it's so. Now here's the question. Why did the doctor give me the map to the treasure before he left? Again, I was amazed. Ah, said Silver. That he did, but something is behind it. Good or bad, Jim? That is the question. And that is where we're going to leave it today. So next time around, we'll be able to find out just exactly what that treasure is, and we'll finish off the book. I'm sorry if I'm reading this at a quick pace, but like I've said before, I just want to make sure we can get through it, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, as I said, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye!